She walked into that room expecting nothing more than silence. But the moment her eyes fell on that screen, everything changed. Her son handed her the phone, hesitating. He didn't speak. He didn't have to, because what she saw was you, your name, your words, your truth, right there in black and white. The screenshot he showed her wasn't just a message, it was a mirror, a reflection of everything he'd tried to bury, everything he swore he had forgotten, but hadn't. And as she read it slowly, word by word, her breath caught in her chest. And then she whispered your name, softly, like a secret, like a prayer. Last night changed everything. It started like any other evening, quiet, unassuming, almost peaceful. But beneath that silence, there was a restlessness stirring in someone's soul. He hadn't meant to go looking for you. He told himself he'd buried those memories, moved on, shut that door for good. But we both know the truth. He never stopped looking over his shoulder, hoping the past might forgive him just once. What he didn't expect was for his own brother to be the one who would unlock the door he kept bolted shut. What happened wasn't planned. It wasn't part of some big reveal, but it was divinely timed, because your name wasn't whispered by accident. It was carried by spirit, by truth, by consequence. And once it escaped her lips, no one could unhear it. It began with a conversation that turned into a confrontation. He was acting off again, distracted, short-tempered. His brother noticed, asked him straight up, "Is this about her?" And something in him broke. He didn't respond with words. Instead, he unlocked his phone, scrolled with trembling fingers to that one folder he swore he'd deleted. But he hadn't. He never could. And when he opened it, there it was, the screenshot. The message you sent that night, the one where you told him everything, the one where your truth bled out onto the screen and you held nothing back. Love, anger, pain, forgiveness, surrender. It was raw, it was real, and it was his reckoning. His brother didn't know what to say. At first, he just stared. He expected to see drama or proof of some petty fight. But what he saw was sacred, a confession, a soul speaking through a screen. And for the first time, his brother saw what he'd been hiding, not just from his family, but from himself. That you weren't just someone he dated. You were someone who changed him, someone who saw him, someone who deserved to be heard, not erased. So without warning, he took the phone, walked straight to their mom, and handed it to her. She didn't expect it. She had no idea what she was about to read. But as her eyes moved across the message, something shifted. Her face didn't twist in anger. Her voice didn't rise in judgment. Number. She went still. Her breath caught. Her hand trembled. And when she finally looked up, she whispered your name. Not like it was a curse, not like it was a threat, but like it was sacred, like she knew, like something inside her soul suddenly made sense. In that moment, the truth shattered the silence they had all built around your name. That whisper wasn't soft because she was afraid. It was soft because it was holy, because something in her heart recognized something in yours. She saw the truth that no one had dared to say aloud. He wasn't lost because of you. He was lost without you. And suddenly, all the little things she'd ignored, all the emotional fragments he left scattered around the house, started to make sense. The way he'd look out the window too long. The way he'd smile at his phone, then shut it off quickly. The nights he said he couldn't sleep. The mornings he said nothing at all. She saw it clearly now. He was haunted. Not by regret, but by the feeling that he'd let something divine slip through his fingers. You were the message he was never supposed to delete, the energy he couldn't replace, the voice he kept hearing in his dreams, no matter how loud the world around him got. And when his mom saw those words, when she read your pain written with so much dignity and love, it cracked something in her. Not because she judged you, but because she finally saw how deeply you had loved him and how much it cost you. She remembered the day you met, the light in his eyes, the ease in his spirit, the way he laughed like he was finally safe. She didn't say it back then, but she felt it. Something about you was different, not convenient, not controllable, but destined. And that scared her, because she knew what destiny demands: surrender. And he wasn't ready. He was too wrapped in fear, too afraid of disappointing everyone, too addicted to appearances and pride. So he ran, not just from you, but from the version of himself that could have grown beside you. And now the illusion is broken. Now the truth is out. And in the aftermath of that whisper, he's sitting in his room replaying every moment in his mind. Every time you asked for clarity and he deflected. Every time you reached out and he waited too long. Every apology he owed but never delivered. Every moment he could have chosen you, but chose silence instead. He sees it now, not as random mistakes, but as missed chances. And those don't come back around the way people think. He knows there are people around him whispering too, gossiping, speculating, judging. He hears them. The relatives, the friends, the ones who never knew your heart but claimed to know your intentions. And for a while, he let their voices drown yours out. He let their opinions become his compass, because it was easier, safer, cowardly. But the truth has a weight, and it's been crushing him in quiet ways, in sleepless nights, in sudden memories, in the ache behind every smile, because deep down, he never believed any of them. Not really. He just wasn't brave enough to believe you, and now that he sees what he lost, he's spiraling, not in anger, but in awakening. He's reliving every message you sent that he left unread, every call he almost returned, every prayer you whispered that he pretended not to hear. And he's realizing something terrifying. You weren't trying to fix him. You were loving him as he was, while gently reminding him of who he could be. There's something else he's realizing too, that it might be too late. That you might have already closed that chapter, moved on, healed yourself in places he left bleeding. And that terrifies him more than anything, because he was always convinced you'd wait, that somehow, no matter how far he drifted, your heart would remain tethered to his. But now he feels it, the distance, the silence, the dignity you've embraced in your absence. And it's humbling. He used to believe he was the one with the power, but now he sees it was always you. You were the one with the strength to feel everything and still choose love. The one who saw every flaw and still stayed present. The one who was brave enough to walk away when staying meant betraying yourself. That kind of love doesn't fade. It transforms. It becomes legend. And that's what you've become to him, an echo he can't ignore, a truth he can't outrun, a name that lives in the quiet moments when his guard is down and his soul speaks louder than his ego. And now he's at a crossroads, not just emotionally, but spiritually. Because now that his family knows the truth, he can no longer pretend it was all just in his head. He can no longer hide behind excuses or timelines or stories. The mirror has been placed in front of him, and it's not showing him your mistakes. It's showing him his, and he's shaken. because deep down he knows. There's only one person who ever loved him that honestly, that unconditionally, and he let them walk away. But he also feels something else now, a spark, a possibility, a door that might not be locked, just waiting for him to grow into the man who can stand beside you, not in shadows, but in truth. And that's why right now he's not sleeping. He's writing, thinking, reflecting, replaying your voice in his mind. Not because he's trying to get you back, but because for the first time, he's trying to understand you, to hear what you were really saying underneath the pain. And more than anything, to earn the right to be heard again. He doesn't want to send you another empty, "Hey." He doesn't want to play the same old game. What he wants is redemption. Not through flowers or gifts or rehearsed lines, but through presence, through healing, through actions that align with the love he always had, but never protected. And even if he doesn't know how yet, he's learning. Because you taught him, through your silence, through your strength, through the way you refuse to be anything less than fully seen, and now there is a shift in the air. Because that whisper from his mother wasn't just a name. It was a signal, a calling, a moment the universe decided to nudge him awake. And maybe, just maybe, he's finally listening. He's remembering now how it felt to hold you. Not physically, but emotionally. To be held in a love that didn't need explanation, didn't need perfection, only presence. And that's what's haunting him tonight. Not your absence, but the purity of your presence. The way your energy filled every silence between your words. The way you understood what he didn't say. How you noticed things no one else did. The shift in his tone, the flicker in his eyes, the hesitation in his breath. You didn't just see him. You read him like scripture, and that terrifies him now, because he knows with a growing ache that no one else ever will. He's surrounded by noise now. Everyone has something to say about you, about the past, about what they think is best. But for the first time, he's not listening to them. He's listening to the part of himself he spent so long trying to silence. The part that still calls your name in dreams. The part that still prays for your happiness when no one's watching. The part that knows you didn't leave because you stopped loving him. You left because he stopped choosing you. And that is a truth he can no longer deny. Because you were never asking for too much. You were just asking to be loved out loud, to be claimed, not hidden, to be held with the same depth you were giving. But he kept you tucked behind locked screens and excuses, telling himself it was for your protection. But deep down, he knows. It was fear. Fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of his own reflection in your eyes. Because when you looked at him, you didn't just see the version he showed the world. You saw it all, the light, the shadows, the broken edges he didn't know how to glue back together. And instead of running, you stayed, until he made it impossible for you to stay any longer. That's why this moment, this exposure, this divine interruption, it's not a coincidence. It's a consequence. A spiritual echo returning to awaken him. Not to punish him, but to show him what happens when you bury gold and pretend it was just another stone. Because you weren't just someone he dated. You were the turning point in his story. The moment his life could have taken a higher path. And he walked away from that. Not because he didn't feel it, but because he felt it too deeply. Now he's waking up in pieces, not from sleep, but from denial. Each memory crashes into the next. That first conversation that stretched into hours. The way your energy shifted the entire room. The night you shared your fears, and he didn't know how to hold them, so he shut down instead. The text you sent that he ignored. The goodbye you whispered, praying he'd stop you, but he didn't. And now, the silence feels like punishment. Because he understands now, you weren't walking away. You were walking toward yourself. And he let you go because he didn't know how to love someone who loved themselves enough to demand honesty. He doesn't want to chase anymore. That's not what this is about. He's tired of cycles, of false starts, of empty promises. What he wants now is redemption. Not the kind that comes with grand gestures and fireworks, but the quiet kind, the sacred kind. The kind that says, I see you now, and I see me, and I want to meet you in truth this time, not fantasy. Because he knows you don't need another apology. You need presence. You don't want another excuse. You want clarity. And if he can't give you that, he won't try to take up space in your life just to ease his guilt. But deep down, he's hoping for one more window, one more moment, one more chance to be heard. Not for his sake, but because he knows your soul deserves closure, not confusion. And maybe even more than that. Maybe you still dream of him sometimes. Maybe you've tried to erase him from your phone, your playlists, your prayers, but something keeps bringing him back. Not because you're weak, but because the connection wasn't built on illusion. It was built on recognition, and real love doesn't go away. It waits. It evolves. It transforms into something deeper, something quieter, something unshakable. That's where he is now, in the transformation, and he's realizing something he never had the courage to admit before. You were never the storm in his life. You were the lighthouse, the one who stood steady while he lost himself in other people's expectations, the one who saw the potential he was too afraid to live up to, the one who loved him through his silence, his anger, his distance, until you had to choose yourself. And now he wants to choose you, not to possess you, but to honor what he couldn't before. He's writing tonight, not to post, not to send, but because he needs to confess. Even if you never read it, even if the words never reach you, his soul needs to speak. And he's writing things he never said aloud, about how he used to replay your voice messages just to feel calm, how your laugh used to pull him out of his own darkness, how he once cried in the middle of the night reading your last goodbye, but never told anyone, because back then showing emotion felt like weakness. But now, he sees it was strength, and you had it all along. There's one more thing he's finally facing, the moment he knew. The moment everything shifted. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was quiet. You were sitting next to him, laughing about something ordinary. And he looked at you, and something in him whispered, "This is home." He didn't say it. He didn't act on it. But that whisper never left. It just got buried under fear. And last night, when his mother read your words, that same whisper returned. This time from her. This time from truth. And that's what woke him up. The whisper that left his mother's lips didn't just echo in that room. It echoed through timelines, through karmic bonds, through memories he thought had faded. It broke something open, not just in him, but in her too. Because in that one moment, she saw something she had refused to acknowledge before. She saw the truth behind his silence. She saw the depth of what he lost. And for the first time, she stopped asking surface questions. She stopped doubting what was real. She knew, and instead of blaming you, She felt something unexpected. Regret. Regret that she didn't see it sooner. Regret that she judged what she never truly understood. And now, she too carries a quiet ache, a knowing that her son once stood at the edge of something sacred and turned away. But that's the thing about divine timing. It doesn't ask for permission. It waits until the soul is ready. And now, he's ready to face what he couldn't before. He's no longer asking, "What will people say?" He's asking, "What will happen to my soul if I stay silent any longer?" He's not trying to please the voices that once kept him stuck. He's trying to listen to the only voice that ever gave him peace, yours. The memory of your voice doesn't haunt him. It heals him, even now, especially now. He's sitting in stillness more than ever before. Not because life has slowed down, but because nothing else feels real anymore. The noise, the chaos, the distractions, they don't numb him the way they used to. Because ever since your name came out of his mother's mouth, he hasn't been able to stop remembering the things he thought he had buried. Like the way you used to say his name when no one was watching. Like the way you'd pause mid-sentence just to look at him like he was magic, even when he didn't feel like it. He's remembering the way you never asked him to be anyone else. You just asked him to show up. And now, he wishes he had. The truth is, he thought he had more time. He thought he could run in circles forever and you'd still be there. He thought distance would dissolve the bond, but it didn't. It just made it louder. And now, that distance feels like punishment. Not because you're gone, but because you gave him every chance to stay and he didn't take it. That's what he can't escape. Not the memories, but the missed moments, the silence when you were hoping for words, the detachment when you were begging for connection, the way he chose pride over vulnerability, again and again. He sees now that it was never about someone else taking your place, because no one could. It was about him being too afraid to admit what he felt, too afraid to be seen in his full truth, because you made him feel seen in a way that stripped away every mask, every performance, every lie he told himself about what love is supposed to look like. You made him feel like he was more than just a name, more than just a title. You made him feel like a soul. And that was terrifying. But now, that fear is transforming, not into certainty, but into courage. He's not trying to figure out how to win you back. He's trying to figure out how to finally show up as the man you always believed he could be. Not because he wants to impress you, but because he wants to honor what you awakened in him. You didn't just offer him love. You offered him a mirror. And now, every time he looks at himself, he sees the reflection you held up, the one that said, "I know who you are underneath all of it." And I love that version of you, even if you've forgotten him. There's something sacred happening within him now, a kind of spiritual unraveling. He's finally allowing himself to feel the grief, not just of losing you, but of losing parts of himself he abandoned long before you ever walked away. And in that grief, he's finding clarity. Clarity that no one ever loved him like you did. Not because you were perfect, but because you loved him through the imperfections. You didn't need him to be a hero. You needed him to be honest. And now he's realizing that's what love really is. Not performance, not perfection, just presence. He's asking himself questions now that he once avoided. Why did he let fear win? Why did he choose silence when your soul was begging to be heard? Why did he let others influence what his heart already knew? And the answer is painful, but necessary. because he was afraid of losing the version of himself that you saw straight through. But in trying to protect his ego, he lost his soul's mirror, and that loss is echoing through everything now. He's looking at the world differently. The places you once walked together feel heavier. The songs you loved sound more sacred. Even the time on the clock seems to pull him into memories. He's realizing now how much of his world was built around the energy you brought in. And without you, it all feels a little hollow. Not because he can't move on, but because he never fully allowed himself to arrive in the first place. He's not expecting forgiveness. He doesn't even know if you'd want to hear from him again. But he's hoping that your heart still holds a small space for the truth. And the truth is, he never stopped loving you. He just didn't know how to love you in the way you deserved. He was chasing control when you were offering connection. He was chasing approval when you were offering authenticity. And now all he wants is a moment, one moment, to look you in the eyes and say what he couldn't say back then. I see you. I honor you. I remember everything. Because it's not too late to speak truth. It's not too late to heal. Time may have taken away the routine, but not the reason, not the soul tie, not the divine recognition. That has only grown louder. And now he's ready to speak, not as the man who left you, but as the one who finally understands why you stayed for as long as you did. He remembers now, not just the milestones you shared, but the micro moments, the sacred pauses between the chaos, the way you once fixed his collar without saying a word, the way your eyes softened when he spoke about his fears, even the ones he tried to disguise as jokes. He remembers how your hand fit into his like a missing verse, finally reunited with the hymn. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was divine. And that's what keeps shaking him now. How something so quiet could have echoed so loud for so long across time and regret and unspoken words. Because that night, when his brother showed that screenshot to his mother, something shifted. The silence didn't feel safe anymore. It felt like betrayal. Not just betrayal of you, but betrayal of everything you built in him. She didn't shout. She didn't accuse. She whispered your name, softly, as if it was holy, as if saying it any louder might cause the entire room to fall apart under the weight of what had been hidden. And he stood there, frozen, not because he was afraid of being caught, but because for the first time, someone else saw you the way he did, with reverence, with awe, with grief. And now he can't stop hearing it. That whisper, that name, that prayer disguised as a person. You. He walks through his home and hears echoes of conversations you never had. Conversations he's now having in his mind over and over. The things he should have said. The way he should have fought for you. The way he should have explained his silence instead of letting it build a wall you were never meant to climb alone. Because you were always waiting, not for perfection, but for presence. Not for the version of him who performed for the world, but for the version of him who only existed when he looked into your eyes. The one who didn't need a script, who didn't need to prove anything, who was enough even with his cracks because you saw gold in them. But he kept trying to hide the parts of him you loved most. The real parts, the scared parts, the dreaming parts. And now he's learning that love isn't about being flawless. It's about being found. You didn't want him to be unbreakable. You just wanted to be the one who was allowed to hold him when he was breaking. And he never let you. Not fully. And that is what he regrets the most. He's not asking for a second chance. Not yet. He's asking for alignment, for truth, for the courage to become the man who doesn't need to hide anymore. Because you deserve to be loved in daylight, not just dreamed of in the dark. And if you've moved on, if your heart has healed, He will bless that journey. But if some part of you is still awake at 2 a.m., still wondering if He remembers, still aching in quiet moments when your friends don't understand why a certain song still makes you cry, He wants you to know that yes, He remembers. Yes, He aches too. And yes, that song still ruins him. You changed him, not with demands, not with ultimatums, but with love. The kind of love that doesn't scream. It sits beside you in silence and stays. The kind that doesn't force. It holds space. And now that space is empty, and it echoes. And in that echo, He hears every word you didn't say out loud. Every time you chose patience over pressure. Every time you swallowed your own pain just to keep peace. Every time you held back your tears because He couldn't handle the truth yet. He sees it now, all of it. And it's breaking Him open. Not with shame, but with awakening. Because the person you loved isn't who he was. It's who he's becoming. He's no longer afraid to feel. He's no longer afraid to speak. And most of all, He's no longer afraid to choose you. Not in secret, not in silence, but with everything He has. He dreams of that day. The day He sees you again, not just in memory, not just in prayer, but in real time. The way your energy enters a room before your body does. The way your smile shifts the atmosphere. The way your presence makes even His demons quiet down and listen. He dreams of that moment. Not to relive the past, but to rewrite the ending. Because the truth is, the story isn't over. You didn't close that chapter. Life just paused it. And now He wants to write the next line, with you. Not with assumptions, not with fear, but with truth, with surrender, with honor. And whether you're ready or not, whether your heart still beats for Him or beats for someone new, He needs you to know. You were never just a chapter. You were the plot twist, the turning point, the moment the entire story shifted toward redemption. And now, He's finally ready to stop running. Not just toward you, but toward the version of Himself that you always believed in. The one who was strong enough to love without armor, to feel without filters, to speak without fear. Because you didn't fall for who He pretended to be. You fell for who He was underneath it all. And that is the man who's writing this now, not with arrogance, but with reverence. Because when his mother whispered your name, he remembered the sacredness of it. And now, every time he says it in his mind, it feels like a prayer. Not for reunion, but for redemption. Not just for him, for you. For everything you gave. For everything you lost. For everything still possible. He wants to rewrite the way you were remembered in His world, not as someone He lost, but as someone who transformed him. Someone who saw light where he only saw fear. Someone who loved the boy inside the man he was too scared to become. And now, every day feels like a quiet pilgrimage back to you. Not physically, but energetically, emotionally, spiritually. He's walking through the ruins of the life he built without you and realizing none of it stands. None of it sings. Because without your voice, even the victories taste hollow. You were the melody before the music, the warmth before the fire. And now he knows why he's cold, because he's missing the only warmth that ever came without a price. Your love didn't demand trophies. It didn't demand masks. It just asked for truth. And now, That truth is haunting him in the softest way. In the middle of the night, in the quiet of his morning coffee, in the space where your name used to live, he's starting to realize that some names aren't just names. They're lifelines. They're songs the soul remembers, even when the mind tries to forget. And he's done pretending now, done with the charade, done with telling himself he's fine when everything inside him is screaming that something is missing. He doesn't want another almost. He doesn't want another distraction. He doesn't want a new beginning with someone who doesn't know his soul the way you did. He wants to come home, and you are home. Not because you fixed him, but because you saw him as someone worth staying for, even when he couldn't see it himself. Now he's counting the cost, not just of losing you, but of losing the future you both whispered about in the dark. The dreams that were never spoken out loud, but felt in every touch. The laughter that echoed in places even silence couldn't steal. He's remembering the moment he looked at you and thought, this is it. This is the one. But he buried that knowing in fear. And now that fear has turned into grief. The kind of grief that doesn't cry. It aches. It lingers. It shapes the days in shadows. And he's not running from that grief anymore. He's sitting in it, learning from it, letting it strip away every lie he used to cover the hole you left. Because it's not just about you leaving. It's about him never showing up. And now he's learning that love isn't about presence. It's about participation. It's about showing up even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's hard, even when your own reflection feels like a stranger, because love, real love, isn't always soft. Sometimes it demands a kind of bravery that feels like surrender, and he's surrendering now, not to you, but to the part of himself that still believes in the kind of love that doesn't have to shout to be heard, the kind of love that whispers your name through the pain, the kind of love that doesn't beg to be chosen. It chooses again and again, without needing permission. He's choosing you now, not because he needs you to complete him, but because he finally understands that what you built together was never about possession. It was about presence, about partnership, about purpose. He sees your face in his dreams, but not as a ghost, as a guide, as a reminder of what it means to be loved with truth and fire and grace. And now he's praying, not for another chance, but for alignment, for the universe to bring you peace, even if it doesn't bring you back, for your heart to feel held, even if not in his hands, because that's what your love taught him. How to honor someone even in absence, how to love someone even in distance, how to keep a soul sacred even when the story isn't finished yet. And it's not finished. He feels it. In the way your name pulls at the air, in the way certain dates still hit his chest like thunder, in the way he still reaches for his phone in the dark, hoping to find your name glowing back at him. He's no longer asking why you left. He's asking why he didn't fight harder to make you stay. And that question has become his teacher, his compass, his prayer. Because some truths don't need to be shouted from rooftops. They just need to be whispered into the silence of a heart that's ready. And he's ready. Not because he's figured it all out, but because he's finally letting go of the lies that told him he wasn't enough. You never asked him to be perfect. You just wanted him to be present. And now he understands the difference. And now, as the days pass, he can't ignore the way your energy still lingers. It's subtle, but undeniable, like the echo of a love that never fully left. Every corner of his life feels incomplete without you. The laughter doesn't sound as warm. The food doesn't taste as rich. The silence, once peaceful, now feels heavy with everything unsaid. He's come to realize that all the things he once took for granted are now a glaring absence. Your voice, your touch, your energy. It's all etched into the spaces where he once thought he could hide his loneliness. In the quiet of his solitude, he begins to see things more clearly than ever before. He sees the mistakes, the times he pulled away when all you needed was to be held. He sees the words he didn't say, the love he didn't express, the opportunities he missed. The weight of those missed chances is a burden he's been carrying all this time, but he's finally ready to put it down, not just for you, but for himself. Because carrying guilt isn't living, it's existing in a constant state of regret. And he refuses to let that be his story. He wants to free himself from the cycle of self-doubt, from the belief that he's too late, from the fear that the door has closed for good. But more than that, he wants to set you free. Free from the pain he caused. Free from the moments when he let his fears speak louder than his love. Because even though he can't change the past, he can change how he shows up now. He can change how he holds space for you. He can change how he values your worth. And he will. He promises that. Every moment he spent without you has become a moment of reflection, a moment of understanding. He's learned that love is not just about being together in the good times, but about showing up for the hard times, about choosing each other every day, no matter how tough it gets. And he knows deep down that if he could go back, he would choose you 1,000 times over. He would choose your smile, your laugh, your presence in his life. Because without you, none of the accomplishments or accolades matter. They're hollow without someone to share them with. They're empty without you. Now he's standing at the crossroads. The past is behind him, and the future is uncertain. But he's no longer afraid of the unknown. He's no longer afraid of what might happen if he takes the leap. Because what's scarier than the unknown is the regret of never trying. He doesn't want to live a life full of what-ifs. He doesn't want to wonder for the rest of his days if he could have fought harder, if he could have loved deeper, if he could have chosen you when it mattered most. And so, he chooses you now. Not just with words, but with action. Not just with promises, but with the courage to show up. He wants to meet you where you are, without any pretensions, without any defenses. He wants to stand in the truth of who you both are and to build something new from that foundation. Because even though the past can never be undone, the future is still waiting to be written. He knows it won't be easy. He knows that healing takes time. But he's willing to be patient. He's willing to do the work. He's willing to wait for as long as it takes, because no matter how long it takes, it will always be worth it. The love you share is worth fighting for. It always was, and so as he looks back at the moments you shared, the laughter, the tears, the dreams, they no longer feel like something lost. They feel like something sacred, something that belongs to both of you, no matter where life takes you. And no matter how much time has passed, he knows deep in his heart that the love you shared is eternal. It doesn't fade with time. It doesn't disappear when circumstances change. It stays with you in the very fabric of your being. And that's why, no matter what happens next, he will always carry you with him. Not as a memory to mourn, but as a part of who he is. Because you are more than a chapter in his story. You are the story itself. And no matter where he goes, he will always come back to you. He remembers now how you looked at him when you didn't think he was watching. That soft gaze, full of silent prayers and quiet hopes. Back then, he didn't understand it. He thought love had to be loud to be real. He mistook your patience for distance, your strength for indifference. But now, in the stillness of his nights, when the world is quiet and the masks fall off, he sees it all differently. He realizes that the love you gave him was the rare kind, the kind that nurtures without demanding, that stays even when unappreciated, that offers its heart without asking for guarantees. And it's this love that is shaking the foundations of his soul, because he didn't just lose a person, he lost a sacred connection, a mirror, a guide, a lifeline that the universe placed gently into his hands, and he let it slip through out of fear. He knows people talked. He knows the whispers behind closed doors, the assumptions made in silence, the questions his family dared not ask out loud, and he let those voices get louder than his own heart. He let shame dictate his silence. He let pride keep him from calling your name when all he wanted was to collapse into your arms and admit he was scared. And when that screenshot was shown to his mother, when your words stared back at her like a confession carved in light, something shifted. The room was quiet, but not empty. Something divine entered the space, a moment of reckoning, a pause in the chaos. Her lips trembled not just from shock, but from recognition, because even she felt it, that this wasn't just a message, this was soul history, and that's when she whispered your name, not with judgment, not with anger, but with a softness that almost made him cry, because in that moment, she saw what he always tried to hide, that you were the one who carried his heart, that your presence in his life wasn't a mistake. It was a miracle he didn't know how to receive. And now the truth is out. The illusion is gone. The family knows. The silence has been broken. And instead of feeling shame, he feels relief. Because no more hiding means no more pretending. No more burying the truth beneath denial. No more living a half-life while his soul aches for completion. He knows it might be too late. He knows you may have already learned how to breathe without him, how to stand taller in your own power, how to fill your nights with laughter that no longer waits for his call. And yet, he still dreams of you. He still remembers how your words made him feel seen, how your laughter healed parts of him he never told you were broken. He still sees your face in the spaces between sleep and wakefulness, that sacred moment when the soul travels and meets what it misses most. And in that space, you're always there, not angry, not distant, but glowing, patient, radiant, like an angel who knew the storm would pass, even when he didn't. And now that storm is beginning to calm. The chaos that once consumed him has begun to reveal its purpose. Because in losing you, he found the part of himself that could never be bought, never be faked, never be replaced. The part that still believes in second chances, in divine timing, in miracles wrapped in human skin. And you, yes, you, were that miracle. You still are. No matter how many people tried to convince him otherwise, no matter how loudly the world shouted its opinions. Your love was always the quietest voice, but also the truest. And now, he's finally listening. He sits with the memory of you like someone holds sacred scripture, afraid to touch it, but even more afraid to forget it. He replays your messages in his mind, not because he can't move on, but because moving on without healing would only be pretending. And he can't pretend anymore. Not after everything's been revealed. Not after the truth finally had its moment. Not in rage, but in reverence. When his brother showed his mom that screenshot, It didn't explode into drama like he feared. It melted into realization that everything he was trying to hide was actually the only thing worth protecting. You were the only part of him that had always been real. And for once, he wasn't punished for his feelings. He was seen in them, truly seen. And the one word she whispered, your name, brought him to his knees. Because it wasn't just your name she spoke. It was the truth of everything he'd buried. And in that single whisper, the whole house seemed to pause. The walls knew. The floor beneath his feet felt different. It was as if your soul walked through the room, asking silently, "Now do you understand?" And yes, he finally does. He understands why he couldn't forget you, even after trying everything. Why no one else's laugh sounded right. Why every conversation with someone new felt scripted, robotic, fake. Because his spirit wasn't just missing love, it was missing alignment. It was missing you. He's no longer fighting it. He's no longer ashamed. He wants the world to know what he should have said long ago. You were never just someone I loved. You were the one I prayed for before I even knew what I needed. And he can't silence that anymore. Not when even the people around him who once judged now feel the truth vibrating through the air. His mother sees it in his eyes. His brother hears it in the cracks of his voice. The guilt he carried isn't just because of what he did, it's because of what he didn't do. All the moments he should have stood up for you. All the times he let people misunderstand your heart because it was easier than explaining what he didn't fully understand himself. But he knows now, and he's not asking for forgiveness. He's asking for a chance to rewrite the story from the beginning. Not from the pain, not from the betrayal, but from the first moment he felt you and everything stilled. That moment you smiled, and something eternal clicked into place. He wants to return to that, the pure, untouched feeling of discovery. The way your energy walked into the room and rewired his nervous system. The way your presence didn't just make him happy, it made him safe. And now he's not trying to win you back with charm or empty apologies. He wants to win your trust with consistency, with honesty, with growth that doesn't need to be announced, because it will be felt. He knows he can't erase the past, but he wants to prove that your love wasn't wasted, that every tear you cried in silence was watering the garden of the man he is now becoming, that the universe didn't separate you in punishment, but in preparation. Because love like this doesn't get destroyed. It gets refined. He wants to sit beside you again, not just as a lover, but as a student. To listen to your wounds, to learn your boundaries, to honor your light. He doesn't want to consume you, he wants to protect you. He doesn't want to explain away the pain, he wants to hold it with you. Because now he understands that real love isn't a rescue, it's a reunion. It's remembering who you both are in the presence of each other. And he remembers now. Not just your face, not just your voice, but your essence, the very soul signature that sang his name without needing to speak. And as he prepares to face you again, whether in this lifetime or the next, he carries that truth like a vow, a silent promise that echoes through every beat of his heart. I see you now. I know what you are to me. And I will never, ever let the world silence your name in my life again. There's a kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. It feels sacred. And that's the kind of silence he now holds whenever he thinks of you. Not the silence of avoidance, not the silence of shame, but the silence of reverence, of awe, of remembering what it felt like to be near someone who didn't just love him, but saw through every layer of him. someone who held his wounds with the gentleness of someone who had been wounded too, yet still believed in healing. And now he aches, not just for your voice, but for that kind of peace again. Because nothing in his life has matched the clarity he found in your presence. Every other connection since has felt like echoes in a tunnel, hollow, faded, incomplete. But you were the voice that rang through him like home. He can't unsee the vision now. He tries to carry on, conversations, errands, responsibilities, but everything is tinted with the knowing that he let go of something that was never meant to be treated casually. You weren't just a phase, you were the prophecy he didn't realize he was living through. And now, every time he tries to distract himself, life pulls him back into that one undeniable truth. Your connection is unfinished. Not broken, not erased, just paused, suspended in divine timing, waiting for him to evolve into the man worthy of touching it again. And he's becoming that man, not for you, not to win back your favor, but because your love inspired him to finally become who he was always meant to be. He knows there was a version of him that made you question your worth. He knows there were moments when you gave and gave, while he stood frozen, scared of what he was feeling. But he's not running from that truth anymore. He's facing it, sitting with it, letting it strip him of every excuse. Because there's no excuse big enough to cover what he lost. And yet, there's still hope. A tiny flame, flickering in the corner of his chest, reminding him that maybe love doesn't die. It waits. It transforms. And it calls you back when both hearts are ready to hear the call. He knows you've changed. He can feel the strength in your silence. He sees the glow in your boundaries. And he loves you even more for it. Because you didn't let heartbreak harden you. You let it polish your soul. You didn't become cold. You became sacred. And that sacredness is what he now bows to. Not with pity, not with regret, but with honor. He doesn't want to be the reason you lower your standards. He wants to rise to meet them. To walk into your life again with clean hands and open eyes, ready to witness the masterpiece you've become in his absence. And yet, he knows this is not a guarantee. He knows this isn't about rushing in and begging for a second chance. This is about truth. Raw, unfiltered, sacred truth. The kind that doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. The kind that doesn't come wrapped in roses and promises, but in surrender. He surrenders now. Not to loss, but to love. To the truth that no matter how far he went, the compass of his heart always pointed back to you. And now he wants to follow it, not to find what was, but to build what could be. Because he's tired. Tired of pretending he's moved on. Tired of acting like you were just another chapter. You weren't. You were the story, the whole book, the divine thread that stitched meaning into every page of his existence. And no matter what the world says, no matter how much time has passed, he knows it's not over. It never was. Because love like this doesn't follow human timelines. It moves in soul years, and in soul time, you're still right on schedule. He's haunted by the missed moment now, not just by what was said, but by what wasn't. The text he drafted and never sent. The truth he rehearsed 100 times in his head, but never let reach his lips. That one day he could have turned everything around. That one phone call, that one moment of courage, could have rewritten the ending. But he froze. He delayed. He convinced himself there would be time. That someday, somehow, the stars would align again without him having to move. And now he knows He was the one who needed to move. He was the one fate was waiting on, not to be perfect, not to have the right words, but to simply show up, because the universe didn't separate you for punishment. It separated you for preparation, and now he feels it. The weight of delay, the ache of unspoken truth, the price of silence. He's surrounded by people, yet he's lonelier than ever. Because no matter how close others stand, they don't reach the place in him you once touched. They don't unlock the parts of him you opened with ease. They don't see the boy behind the bravado. They don't hold his soul when his smile fades. But you did, without asking, without expecting anything in return. And that's what terrifies him the most. That he may never find that again. That your kind of love doesn't come in duplicates. That even if he meets someone who checks every box, they'll never carry your essence. Because what you gave him wasn't just affection, it was divinity. It was a mirror to his highest self. And now he's staring at a reflection that feels dim, like a light that once burned bright but has flickered into a hollow glow. Because what fuels a man isn't just ambition or desire, it's being seen. And you saw him completely, before he was ready, before he even knew what it meant to be worthy. He walks differently now, talks differently, because grief does that. Not grief of loss, but grief of realization. Realizing that love isn't about who stays the longest. It's about who changes you forever. And you did that. Quietly, powerfully, without demand, without force. And now the silence between you two feels like a language only the soul understands. He hears your name in the wind. He sees your face in songs he used to skip. He tastes your presence in places you never visited together, but somehow still echo with your energy. He doesn't know what your life looks like now. If you've moved on, if someone else holds your hand, if your laughter dances into someone else's chest at night. But he hopes above all that you are loved the way you deserve. And if that love ever circles back to him, he promises not to hesitate this time. Not to run, not to listen to fear, but to follow the pull that's always been there. That sacred tether between souls that time, distance, and logic can never truly sever. Because your name isn't just a memory to him, it's a vow, etched into the deepest part of him. And now, after everything, he's ready to say it out loud. Something shifted last night, not just in him, but around him. The air felt heavier, the room quieter, and it wasn't the silence of peace. It was the silence before a truth finally rises. The moment his brother brought that screenshot into the light, it felt like the universe had grown tired of his avoidance. As if everything he'd been ignoring, every emotion he tried to bury, every whisper of his soul, had finally decided to speak without asking for permission. And what was once a private ache became public revelation. It was no longer just between you and him. It was in the open. And even though the world didn't explode, something inside him did. Something that will never go back to sleep. He looked at that image like a man stares into a mirror after years of pretending he's someone else. Because there you were, your words, your warmth, your presence, frozen in time, but louder than ever. It wasn't just a screenshot. It was a confession, a reminder, a question from the divine asking him, now that the mask has fallen, will you still hide? And for the first time, he didn't. He didn't deny it. He didn't deflect. He stood still and let the truth pierce through, that he never moved on, that he never truly let go, that you were never just a chapter, because some stories don't end with a period. They wait, they hold, They linger in the space between what was and what could still be. He remembers how you used to call his name, not with expectation, but with belief, as if you weren't calling for the man he was, but for the man he could become. And now he hears that tone in his memory like a song he thought he forgot. It follows him in the hallways. It speaks to him when he's alone. It guides him when his chest gets tight and his heart whispers, "What if you're too late?" But he's learning now that maybe late isn't the same as lost. That maybe some souls need time to unravel their own shame before they can fully receive the kind of love that doesn't shame them for being undone. Because that's what you gave him. A love that didn't demand. A love that didn't punish. A love that waited at the gates of his silence until he was ready to speak. And now he wants to speak. Not just to you, but to everyone who once made him feel like loving you was weakness. He wants to stand in that same room, look them in the eyes and say, "She wasn't a mistake. She was the light I couldn't hold yet, and I won't pretend anymore." Because that whisper, your name, spoken by his mother in the softest, most unexpected tone, echoed like thunder in his spirit. It was the moment he knew you were never the problem. His denial was. So what happens now? He doesn't know if you'll answer. He doesn't know if you still pray for him at night. He doesn't know if your heart still opens just a little when you hear his name. But he hopes, not in desperation, not in expectation, but in reverence, because he finally understands this was never just about timing or distance or fear. It was about awakening. It was about becoming the kind of man who no longer runs from his own reflection when he sees it mirrored in your love. And now, he's ready. Ready to remember. Ready to rebuild. Ready to hold your name not like a memory, but like a beginning. He thought he could outrun it, that if he just stayed busy enough, surrounded himself with noise and routine and obligation, he could silence the part of his soul that still trembled when he thought of you. But what he didn't realize is that the heart does not forget its home. It doesn't matter how far he wandered, how many hands he held, how many nights he pretended not to care, the heart always knows where it belongs. And now the illusion has shattered. Because no amount of distraction can quiet the truth that is screaming inside him now. You were it. You were always it. Not because you made things easy, not because you fit perfectly into the life he had, but because you made him dream of the life he never thought he deserved. There's something haunting about missing a soul connection. Not in the dramatic, romantic sense, but in the subtle, daily ache of knowing there's someone out there who saw you fully and still stayed. Someone who touched your darkness and whispered, "I'm not afraid." That's what you were for him. A mirror, yes, but also a sanctuary. And now the memory of that sanctuary is what wakes him in the middle of the night. It's what pulls his chest tighter every time he hears your name in a conversation or stumbles upon a song you once sent him. Because the world didn't erase you. It can't. It merely pressed pause while he caught up to what your love always knew. That his destiny wasn't in avoiding pain, but in choosing a love that was worth the risk of being known. He's starting to forgive himself now. Not because time has erased what he did, but because clarity has arrived. He finally sees how fear wrapped itself around him and made him choose silence when your heart was calling out for truth. He sees how pride dressed itself up as logic and made him turn away when everything inside him was screaming to run to you. He sees how he failed, not in being human, but in not trusting your divinity. And that realization has broken him open in ways he never imagined. He no longer looks at love as something to win or deserve, but as something to honor. And if he's ever given the chance again, that's exactly what he'll do. There's a quiet storm in him now, a stillness that doesn't ask for attention, but prepares for return. He's not coming back with grand speeches or perfect plans. He's coming back with presence, with hands that shake but still reach, with eyes that might carry tears but no longer carry shame, with a heart that knows it was wrong and still dares to hope it can be right. Because sometimes the most powerful apology isn't a sentence, it's a changed life. And he is changing for the first time, not because he wants to be chosen, but because he wants to be worthy of the love he once didn't know how to hold. There are nights when he still tries to convince himself that he's over it, that the version of him that loved you has moved on, that maybe you were just a lesson and not the destination. But no matter how many times he tells himself that, there's a silence afterward that speaks louder than his thoughts. A silence filled with your name, with the memory of your voice calling him home, with that unspoken pull that never left, even when he did. It's the kind of connection you can't manufacture or replace. It's soul memory. And now, every day, he's waking up with this quiet ache, not of longing, but of awareness. Because for the first time, he knows what he lost, and more importantly, what he still wants to find again. And it's not just your love he misses. It's the version of himself he was becoming in your presence. The man who dared to be soft in a hard world. The man who didn't need to hide his shadows because you kissed them with your light. The man who didn't fear vulnerability because you made it safe to be seen. That man still lives inside him, but he's buried under layers of regret, silence, and unspoken words. And every time someone asks him if he's okay, he wants to scream, "No." Because I left the one person who made me feel like I could finally be more than my wounds. There's a sacred kind of grief that comes from realizing you hurt someone who only ever wanted to heal you. He carries that now, not as guilt, but as a compass. A reminder of what not to lose again. And sometimes, late at night, he imagines what he would say to you if the walls between you dropped. He doesn't picture a movie scene or a perfect moment. He pictures standing in front of you with nothing but the truth. No script, no defense, just a man holding the pieces of his heart and whispering, "This is what's left. But it's yours if you still want it." He knows now that love isn't about being ready. It's about being real. And the most real thing in his life, even after all this time, is you. He remembers the way your eyes softened when you saw through his chaos, the way you held space for his confusion without making him feel small, the way you gave him time even when he wasted it. And now, with every passing day, he's learning how to give back that same grace to himself, to you, to the connection that never really ended, but only paused for breath. And though he still wrestles with fear of being too late, fear of saying too much, fear of not being enough, he's starting to understand that love was never about fear. It was always about choice. And every moment he spends remembering you is a moment he realizes, if given the choice again, he would choose you. Not because you were perfect, but because you were real. Because you loved him like it was a sacred duty. Because you didn't need him to be anything but himself. And somehow that made him want to become everything. He never told anyone this, but after you left, there were nights he would rehearse conversations in his head, dialogues that would never happen, lines he never had the courage to speak. He would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, haunted by the way you looked at him the last time you spoke. Not angry, not broken, just disappointed. As if your soul had finally accepted that you couldn't keep waiting for someone who didn't even know what to do with a love as sacred as yours. And that look, it cut deeper than any goodbye. Because it wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. It was final. And he's been trying to reverse that silence ever since. He scrolls through old messages now and then, not because he doesn't know what they say, but because he's trying to remember how he felt when you sent them. The warmth, the safety, the subtle way your words always knew exactly what to soothe without him having to ask. You were intuitive like that. You didn't need explanations. You read between his pauses, understood his absences, loved the parts of him even he didn't dare look at too closely. And in a world that demanded he always be strong, you gave him the gift of softness. He didn't know how to hold that. He wasn't taught how to receive something so unconditional. So instead, he pushed it away. But pushing you away never erased you. If anything, it branded him with a longing that has only intensified. He sees your name in places it doesn't belong, hears your laugh in dreams he can't explain, feels your absence like a second skin, always there, just beneath the surface of everything he pretends is fine. And it's exhausting. Not because he wants to forget you, but because he knows he never truly can. Because forgetting you would mean forgetting the only time he felt truly alive. And that's a kind of loss the soul doesn't recover from. So now he lives in this strange in-between, a place where your memory is both his comfort and his consequence. A place where he's learning to forgive himself, not to excuse the past, but to make room for the possibility of a future. One where if the universe ever gives him another chance, he won't waste it explaining his fears. He'll show up, not as the man who left, but as the man who grew. The man who now understands that real love isn't found in perfection, it's found in persistence, in truth, in the quiet courage to come back when you realize you were wrong. He's not asking for fairy tales anymore. He's not dreaming of grand gestures or cinematic moments. He just wants a single moment of real, a moment where your eyes meet again and neither of you has to pretend, a moment where the past isn't erased, but honored, where everything that broke is laid bare, not to relive the pain, but to rebuild with purpose, because what you shared, it wasn't temporary, it was transformational. And some transformations take time. Some loves, no matter how delayed, always find their way back when both hearts finally whisper the same thing. I'm ready now. He used to think time would save him, that the ache would dull, the memories would fade, and someday he'd stop reaching for something that wasn't physically there. But he was wrong. Time didn't heal, it revealed. It showed him what was real and what was just a distraction. It peeled back the layers of denial he'd wrapped around himself like armor. And now that he's stripped of all the excuses, all the reasons he gave himself to justify letting you go, he's left with one truth. You were never just a chapter. You were the story, the soul thread that ran through every season of his growth, even when he couldn't admit it out loud. He walks differently now, quieter, more careful, because he carries you in every step, not like a ghost, but like a prayer. You live in his patience, in the way he listens now before reacting. You live in his silence, in the way he no longer fills the void with noise, but lets it speak to him. You live in the way he speaks to others, with gentleness, with presence, because that's how you loved him. Without rushing, without trying to fix, just holding space. And he never knew how healing that was until it was gone. Sometimes he wonders if you still feel it too. If you pause when certain songs play. If your breath catches when his name is mentioned in passing. If your heart remembers the way it used to race just from reading a message that said, "I'm thinking about you." He wonders if you ever scroll through old photos and see the boyish smile he wore only when he was with you. If you ever whisper to the sky the questions he still doesn't have answers for. Because he does, often, more than he lets on. He still talks to the stars, still prays for your joy, even if it's not with him. Still carries your name like a flame inside his chest that no storm has been able to put out. He doesn't want to chase anymore, not because he's tired, but because he understands now. That real love doesn't demand pursuit. It invites return. And he wants to return, not to the past, but to the truth that it was always you. That every detour only brought him back to the same realization. He had something rare, something divine, and he let it slip because he didn't yet believe he was worthy. But he's learning, slowly, painfully, and beautifully. He's building a life now that has space for you, not in memory, but in presence. A life where he no longer hides from vulnerability, where he doesn't confuse stillness with weakness, where he's not ashamed to say, "I missed it, I missed you, and I don't want to miss another moment." He's ready to be seen again, not as the man who left, but as the man who stayed broken long enough to be rebuilt. The man who finally knows that loving you wasn't a mistake. Losing you was. He's no longer fighting the signs. For a long time, he tried to rationalize the way your name kept echoing in his quietest moments. He blamed it on memory, on nostalgia, on loneliness. But none of those things explain the way your energy still touches him when he's staring at the sky. None of those explain the way your face appears in his dreams, not as a stranger, not as a symbol, but as the one. The only one who ever looked at him and didn't see a problem to solve, but a soul to hold. And now, every coincidence, every sign, every repeated number, every dream, it's all reminding him, this isn't finished. This isn't over. It never was. He knows he can't walk back into your life and expect open arms. He's not delusional. He's aware of the time, of the silence, of the damage. He knows he lost your trust, not in one grand moment, but in a series of quiet betrayals, of not choosing you, of not defending you, of not speaking up when it mattered most. And yet, even through all of that, your heart stayed loyal longer than he deserved. And he feels that weight now, not as guilt, but as reverence. You were a gift he mishandled, but he's finally stopped asking, "Why did I lose them?" and started asking, "How can I honor what they gave me?" There's a fire in him now, not the reckless kind, not the kind that burns everything in sight, but the kind that quietly refuses to die, the kind that lives in the chest of someone who's been humbled by truth, who has been stripped of ego, who has looked in the mirror and finally said, "I'm not proud of who I was, but I am proud of who I'm becoming." And everything in him now is rooted in one sacred vow. If life gives him one more chance to stand before you, he won't fill the space with explanations. He'll fill it with truth, with presence, with actions that don't just ask for forgiveness, but show they were never meant to hurt you again. He remembers the way your presence felt, like calm in a world full of noise. You didn't have to say much. Sometimes you didn't say anything at all. And yet being around you made him feel like he was allowed to stop pretending, like he could exhale, like he could finally lay down his weapons and just be. That kind of safety, that kind of peace, it doesn't come twice. It's sacred. And he knows now it was never just chemistry, never just timing. It was soul. It was God. It was divine orchestration disguised as ordinary love. And he let it slip through his fingers because he was still learning how to hold something that didn't come with conditions. He's done pretending now, done running, done blaming the stars, the timing, the world, because the truth is, it was him. He couldn't see it, couldn't hold it, couldn't speak it. But now, with every breath, he's learning, and he's praying, not for everything to go back to the way it was, but for the strength to rebuild something better, something truer, something real. And deep inside, he holds on to the smallest, most sacred hope that maybe, just maybe, your soul still remembers what has felt like in its purest form. He remembers the moment he saw your name light up his phone for the first time, not because it was flashy or dramatic, but because something in him shifted. It was as if the universe whispered, "Pay attention." And even now, years or months later, that whisper still lingers. It's followed him into every connection he tried to force, every new face that never quite felt right. No one else ever brought him home the way you did. No one else disarmed his defenses with a single, "How was your day?" No one else heard the war in his voice when he said, "I'm fine," and still stayed until the silence softened. He didn't realize it then, but that was love. Not loud, not demanding, just real. Now when he sits in silence, it's not empty anymore. It's filled with you. The memory of how you used to call out the light in him when he only saw the shadows. The way you never tried to fix him, but still, somehow he felt healed in your presence. He doesn't know how to explain that to people. That sometimes healing doesn't come from lessons or logic. It comes from being loved the way you needed as a child. And you gave him that, without asking for anything back. That's why losing you wasn't just heartbreak, it was spiritual amnesia, like forgetting who he was before the world told him to be something else. There's a place inside him now that no one else has ever reached, a sacred space only your energy could ever fill. He doesn't go there often, not because he's forgotten, but because every time he visits, he feels both your presence and your absence. It's the quiet ache that reminds him what real love costs, not the shallow kind that crumbles when tested, but the kind that lives on, even when silence stretches between hearts, even when time tries to bury it under distractions, even when doubt pretends it was never real, but it was, it is. And no matter how much he's tried to outrun that truth, it always finds him in the stillness. He's been listening more lately, to the wind, to dreams, to the tiny nudges that say, "Reach out." But he's scared, not of you, but of what his silence may have cost. He doesn't want to reopen wounds, doesn't want to interrupt your peace if you finally found it. And yet, part of him hopes you haven't moved on completely. Not because he wants you to hurt, but because he wants to believe that maybe, just maybe, this soul connection was real for you too. That somewhere inside, there's still a flicker, still a wondering, still a part of you that pauses when your phone buzzes late at night, hoping it's him. He's not asking the universe for guarantees anymore, just for grace, for one aligned moment, for one divine opening where hearts can speak without armor. He doesn't want to manipulate the timing, doesn't want to force the path, but he's made a silent vow. If life ever places him near you again, he won't waste the moment. He won't let his pride speak louder than his heart. He won't choose silence when his soul is screaming your name. He will stand in front of you, not as a boy afraid of love, but as a man reborn by it. He never told you this, but you were his peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from silence or solitude, but the kind that feels like home, even in chaos. The kind of peace that makes the storms in his head go quiet the moment your hand brushed against his. You didn't need to say anything profound. Your presence was enough. Just knowing you were breathing in the same room, feeling the same air, looking into the same sky, it was enough to make him feel like the world wasn't such a scary place after all. And now, without you, everything feels a little colder, a little louder, a little harder to carry. He's tried to replicate what he felt with you. He's gone on walks with people who laughed at the same jokes, dined with people who looked the part, shared moments that were supposed to be special, but none of them reached his soul. None of them could hold the weight of his silence like you did. They didn't know how to read the stories behind his eyes. They didn't know how to offer their hand when his didn't know how to reach. You did. You always did. And that's when he knew. Some people don't just love you, they see you. And being seen like that, that's not easy to forget. That's not something time washes away. He's tired of pretending, tired of wearing a mask for the world that says he's okay, because he's not. Not really. Not in the way that matters. His soul feels unfinished, as if a sacred sentence was left hanging mid-thought, as if a promise whispered between souls was never fulfilled. He still dreams of you sometimes, not in dramatic, movie-like ways, but in those quiet dreams where you're just there, sitting beside him, laughing softly, saying nothing. And he wakes up with tears he can't explain and a longing he can't name. That's how he knows this wasn't just a chapter. You were the book, the cover, the spine, the story that stitched everything together. There's something holy about how you loved him. Not perfect, not easy, but holy. Because you loved him where it hurt. You stood beside him when his past tried to sabotage everything. You didn't demand healing. You became the space where healing could begin. And even though he didn't always know how to receive that love, even though he sometimes pushed you away out of fear, he sees it now. The way you stayed. The way you showed up, the way you believed in his light even when he only saw shadows. And that kind of love doesn't vanish. It etches itself into the soul. It becomes part of who he is. And no matter how much distance time has placed between you, that love still pulses in his chest. He doesn't know how to fix this, doesn't know what words could possibly capture the depth of what he feels. But he knows this. He doesn't want to carry this silence anymore. He doesn't want to keep walking through life pretending the most real thing that ever happened to him was just a phase. It wasn't. You weren't. You were the divine disruption that changed everything. And even if the world doesn't understand it, even if friends, family, logic, and pride tell him to move on, his soul still turns toward you like a sunflower toward light. Because that's what you've always been to him. Light. And he's ready to stop running from it. Something inside him has changed. And this time, it's not just another fleeting emotion. This isn't a passing wave of nostalgia. This is a full-body realization that what he ran from is exactly what he's been searching for. In every conversation that felt hollow, in every connection that lacked depth, in every late-night moment when the world quieted down and the ache of your absence roared louder than anything else, he finally understands. You were the moment he was meant to protect. You were the chapter he should have underlined, memorized, and never closed. He thought walking away would give him peace, but all it gave him was distance from the only place he ever truly felt found. He has played the memory of your last goodbye more times than he can admit. Not just the words, but the silence between them. The way your voice cracked like a prayer unanswered. The way you looked at him, not with anger, but with heartbreak. And that look, that was the moment everything began to haunt him. Because you didn't just walk away, you let go with grace. And nothing has broken him more than realizing he gave up a rare soul like yours without even fighting for it. Not because he didn't care, but because he was scared. Scared of how much you mattered. Scared of how deeply you saw him. Scared that he would somehow ruin something so divine by not being enough. But he sees it now. Clearer than ever. You were never asking him to be perfect. You were just asking him to be present, to be honest, to show up with his truth, even if it was messy. You weren't waiting for a flawless version of him. You were loving the flawed version, praying he would see what you already did, that he was capable of being everything his heart longed to be. And now, he feels it. That echo inside. That whisper that says, you still have time. If you stop hiding, and he wants to, not to fix the past, but to build a future that carries the lessons of it. There is a quiet kind of desperation inside him now. Not the kind that begs, not the kind that forces, but the kind that waits at the edge of surrender, hoping, believing, aching for a sign, a door, a word, a glance. Anything from you that might say, I still feel this too. He's not asking for fireworks. He's asking for truth. Because the truth is, you were the only one who ever touched his spirit without needing to touch his body. The only one who heard the part of him even he didn't understand. The only one who could look into his eyes and see the little boy still trying to be brave. And that's not something he can find again. That kind of connection isn't built, it's divine. And it happened. With you. He holds on to that now. Not as fantasy, but as compass. Let others call it a missed opportunity. Let the world say he should let go. But deep inside, there is a vow forming. A quiet, unshakable knowing. That if he is ever blessed enough to hold your hand again, it won't be to apologize for the past. It will be to build something sacred in the present. No hesitation, no hiding, no games, just soul meeting soul, ready to begin again. And so, it happens. In the quiet of a room where no one else is watching, he breaks the last layer of his silence, not with noise, but with truth. The kind of truth that has lived in his chest like an unanswered prayer. The kind that once made his throat burn every time he thought of you and said nothing. But not anymore. He can't hold it in anymore. The love he feels for you has matured beyond romance, beyond fantasy. It's a vow now. A sacred inner promise that no matter where life takes him, he will never again betray what is real, just to protect what is easy. Because you were never just a chapter. You were the catalyst, the soul that woke him up from his own numbness, the one who reached in, not to fix him, but to remember him. And now he remembers, not only who you were to him, but who he became in your presence. He misses the version of himself that existed only in your light. Not because you completed him, but because you reminded him that he was always whole, always worthy, even in the places he tried to hide. You didn't rescue him. You resurrected him. He knows now. Silence is no longer strength. Avoidance is not peace. Time is not healing if it's spent running. And love, real love, it doesn't disappear when tested. It evolves, it deepens, it returns when it's meant to, and this time, it returns with clarity. He doesn't want to chase anymore. He wants to meet you in truth, not at the place where it ended, but at the place where it began. When souls spoke louder than logic, when hearts recognized each other without words, when your name first touched his spirit and everything inside him whispered, "It's you." So if you're listening, if your heart is still open even just a little, know this: he's ready, not perfect, not polished, but ready. Ready to hear your truth, to hold space for your pain, to honor what was broken and rebuild what can still be sacred. Not with promises, but with presence. Not with urgency, but with reverence. Not to win you, but to walk beside you, this time fully awake. Because he finally understands. You weren't just his once upon a time. You are the, if I'm ever blessed again, let it be them. You are the soul he prays he hasn't lost. The voice he still hopes to hear. The mirror that showed him who he could be if he ever chose love over fear. And maybe, just maybe, you've felt it too. That ache, that wondering, that invisible thread that never broke, no matter how many times you tried to forget. Because some souls, they don't move on. They wait in the stillness. They love in the silence. They speak in dreams. And maybe your soul has been waiting too, for this moment, for this message, for this remembrance. So if any part of you still believes, still aches, still wonders if that love was real, let this be your answer. It was. It is. And maybe, just maybe, it always will be. Type, "I still feel it," if your heart whispered anything while listening. Share in the comments how this touched you. You're not alone. If you believe divine love always finds a way, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your angels brought you here for a reason. Don't leave without telling them thank you. The story may pause here, beloved listener, but the soul connection, it continues. You are loved. You are remembered. You are not forgotten. Until next time.